everyone, I'm Phoebe and I've just been making my new outfit. So I've made myself a lovely top and some trousers, and I've also made myself a bracelet. Do you like that? So I've gone ahead and I've cut out my pattern pieces and they're all here. So we have, this one, mine is slightly, because I was working, this is my working pattern. So this is your back, and you should have two pieces of your back, and then you should have one piece of your front like that. And then you're going to have a big long piece which is 1.5 inches by, sorry, let me see, it should be 1.5 inches by 48 inches, and then you're going to have another big long piece which should be 2 inches by 48 inches. You probably won't need that much. This one I didn't have enough to do that, so I've just taken it and I've just done a straight stitch, put them together, did a straight stitch down, and then just finger pressed it open for a minute, okay, like that, because this is going to be your ruffle, so you're not going to see any of that anyway. So the next thing we are going to do is to take your front piece here, and we're going to, where it's been folded, you need to make sure that you get a nice fold down that center like that, okay? And then take it and open it up and get your ruler, and you want to mark onto your fabric, put your line of your ruler into the center, on that center line, and then mark it at 1/2 inch on each side, and do the same here and mark it at 1/2 inch on each side, and then join those up so you've got a line of stitches just running straight the way down there and running straight the way down there like that. I just notice mine's just slightly out, so just do it like that. So you've got two lines just like that where you're going to put your ruffle. So once you've got your two lines drawn on the front, just turn it over and do exactly the same on the back. Draw your two lines, because you're going to need your lines so that you can see where they are on the back to get that nice straight line on your stitch, on your ruffle. So just draw those on just like that, just the same way as you did it on the front. Okay. And then this piece we're going to put to one side, and we're going to take this piece, which is your 1.5 inch piece, and we're going to turn it up onto the 1/4 inch seam, and then we're going to turn it again and do it on a 1/2 inch seam. And I've been on a little course, and I've learned how to do some new techniques. So I'm going to show you the way that I learned on this course to do the turn up for your turned seam. So I've just put my foot, and I'm using a 1/4 inch quilter's foot, and I'm just going to pop it onto the fabric, so we've got a little bit of the fabric on there, just like that. And if you are going to be using a join, make sure the join is facing upwards, okay? And all we're going to do along here is we're going to put in a basting stitch. So I'm going to change my stitch length from where I usually am on 4 up to my biggest stitch, okay? I'm going to just run along the fabric to the end. So when you get to that middle bit, just stop for a second and just do it much slower over the top of that, and then keep going until you get to the very end. And you don't want to put a end stitch, a back stitch in here. You just want to pull it out, and you want to leave yourself a nice long end. So here is the basting stitch, and all we're going to do now is turn it, but we want the basting stitch just to sit just there like that on the, so you've got just like about 1/8 of an inch on the other side. I'm just going to come all the way along and just turn it like that. And I found it was better to sort of start a little way in and then work your way back, because otherwise when you try and start at the end, that end turns to curl under. So I'm just going to go all the way along and do this with the iron until you've got that just curled under, just like that, just that one time. I have done all my basting stitch all the way along, and then I'm just taking my little scissors and I'm going to cut all the way along, but just beside that basting stitch. Don't cut into the basting stitch, but just cut along beside it. Now I managed to get these little sharp scissors from a shop near us. They're an embroidery type scissor, and they're much easier for doing this very close work. But obviously you can use your dressmaking scissors or whatever you need, but just cut it along by that basting stitch there. Okay, so that was where we'd ironed it. So we've just done like that, and now we're going to take it back to the iron and we're going to fold it over one more time and set a nice curve, a nice gentle fold like that all the way along, and that will give you a really nice neat edge with not very bumpy at all. So that's just going to be a little bit nicer road hem than the one we've been used to, which has always been a little bit bumpy. That's going to be a lot flatter. Okay, so I'm going to just take that back to my iron and give it a little press. So basically all you want to do is just roll it under and then pop your iron across the top, and you'll find that you've got a much neater little road hem with hardly any bulk in it. Just like that. And then we're going to just take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a straight stitch right along, getting that stitch just on that edge. I'm not going to show you how to do that. I think you've probably seen how to just do a straight stitch all the way along to the very end. So there we have it. So this is your big long piece, and then we are going to, and then I've taken off that big long piece from each end. I've taken two 6-inch pieces. Okay, and what we're going to do now is take them to the sewing machine, and we're going to change our stitch. I'm going to change our stitch to a number 7, just like that there, and we are going to do a running tacking stitch all the way along so that we can gather that skirt in at the waist. So you want to make sure you've got a nice long end on your piece of cotton or yarn, whatever you're using. I'm going to put this on at 1/4 of an inch, and we're just going to run a tacking stitch along. We're going to put this on at 1/8 of an inch. We're just going to run a tacking stitch all the way along. You do not need, sorry, I've got this all caught up. You do not need to put in a back stitch on this. So we're just going to run it all the way along like that. Those nice big stitches. And then we're just going to pull it out. Leave your long ends and then do exactly the same, but you want to do it this time so that you've got, so I'm going to do exactly the same, but this time I've got it on my 1/4 of an inch here. So I'm going to, my needle is going to come just underneath this line of stitching. And don't do a back stitch, just leave yourself a nice long thread. Okay, and then we're going to do that with your other 6-inch piece and your great big long piece. Okay, so what we're going to do, and I'm going to bring you a bit closer, I think. Okay, you can see the line now here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure all our gathering's nice and tight. I'm going to place this very end with the knotted side at the very top, and I'm going to put my pin there, and I'm going to put it in that second row of stitching, and I want this to be nice and close to the top, so it's in there, and I'm going to put that straight into that pencil line and bring it out, and then bring it in and put it in onto that bottom line stitching, and that should get you a nice straight edge. So when you fold it back, that should be sitting on that line. Okay, and then we'll gather that in So that was your knotted end. So from this end now you can push your gathers up, okay? Get it nice and laying flat. Then take your next pin, put it under those stitches there, lift it up and then check that you are definitely sitting on your pencil line, okay? And then do it the same again there and check again that you're definitely on that pencil line, okay? Because you want to keep it nice and straight, and then just keep going doing that all the way down until you get to the bottom. When you get to the bottom, you need to leave about this much overhanging the bottom of the little top, okay, for the frill. So I should just carry on doing that until I've got it all pinned all the way down. There we go. So once you've got that side done and it's all sat beautifully on your pencil line, you just want to take your other piece, your 6-inch piece, and lay that on, gather it up and do it so that it's facing inwards just the same. Make sure you've got your raw, that sort of turned under edge, that needs to be on the inside, and then do it exactly the same, gather it up and put it on to that line, okay? Okay, so what I want to do now is get a nice straight stitch, and obviously I won't get a straight stitch going across this because it's all bumpy and wavy and I can't get a straight line from it. So what I want to do is come over and make my stitches up to a number 7 again, and I'm just going to do a basting stitch down here. Let's see if I can find the foot. And that will just hold both pieces of fabric in place whilst I get and take the pins out of the way because they're really hard to see through. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, but just leave a long end hanging here. Got quite a few long ends now. And we'll just do exactly the same on the other side. So this is just going to be a basting stitch which we can remove later on. And then bring it round in that lovely pencil line that you drew on the back, changing your stitch back to a normal stitch. Just do a row of straight stitches all the way down. Right. I did a back stitch first, making sure that's laying lovely and flat underneath. Any bumps or knocks there you go, and do exactly the same on the other side. So I've gone ahead and I've removed all my threads, and then I'm just neatening it up. I've took it to the iron and I've just neatening it up so that this is laying lovely and flat on that very top piece, and I want exactly the same to lay flat on this bottom piece as well, like that. There we go. And that's laying really nicely. Okay, now as you can see on mine, you've got a few of your stitches are showing, so from your basting, so you can just go along with your quick on pick and remove any of those stitches which are sticking out. And then once you've done all that and it's ironed and it's looking lovely and flat, we'll come and do the next piece. So the next thing you want to do, and it's just a tiny bit of stitching for this, is place your 2 back pieces onto your front piece like that, and we're just going to stitch up a 1/2 inch on both sides, just like that. So just from there to there and no further, okay? So we're just going to take it to the machine, do a little back stitch there, stitch up and a little bit back stitch there, and then the same on the other side. So the next thing we're going to do is to make a piece of biased binding. And the way we are going to do that is we're going to take our piece of fabric, and this has been cut on the bias, and I will show you how you do that. Okay, so really stupidly I've just gone and cut the bias binding all, so I don't actually have the piece which I was using, and it didn't fit onto this size of the fabric anyway. So this is the way we'd usually cut fabric, and as you can see it's got a grain and it's going that way, okay? But we want to cut the fabric which is on the bias, and if you have a look, if I pull that, there's not much of a stretch, and if I pull it that way, there's not much of a stretch. But if I pull it this way, and you see that stretch in it, and that's what we need to have to make our bias binding. So all I'm going to do is fold mine in half. You fold it, you'll need a bigger piece, so you can fold it into quarters like that and get a nice straight edge. And the way you know when you're cutting that you're going to get a straight edge is to line up your ruler with this folded edge, okay? And then whatever you cut here will then be your straight line, and then move it down to whatever size you want. So if you want 1.5, put it onto your line and then cut it there at 1.5, and that will give you your long piece of bias binding. I think the bias binding that we want is 2 inches, so you would just move it down to your 2-inch mark on your ruler and then cut it along there. And you can just do exactly the same with this one, but use just measure that piece at 2 inches and put a mark there, and then measure this piece again at 2 inches and put a mark there, okay? And you will know that that is correct if you do that. To get your straight line, what you do is you put your end of your ruler there, so that you know that that's absolutely straight, and then you can see that that's straight and cut across there, okay? So that is how you cut the bias binding. So this is my bias, which has been cut on the 2 inches. I'm just going to fold the whole thing in half. I'm going to just press that in half, like that, all the way down. Just like this the whole way. You want to keep it as straight as you can, because it is cut on the bias, it is going to want to sort of move around a little bit, so keep it as straight as you possibly can on your ironing board. And then I'm going to open it back up again. I can get special tools for doing this, but I find that the neatest way to do it is like this. So you fold that piece there into the middle and then come down and go all the way along, folding that piece into the middle. So you get to the bottom. And when you get to the bottom, come back up and you're going to fold this piece into the middle. Just like that. So that you've got that is touching that, those two seam lines there are touching each other, the two raw edges meet in the middle and touch. Okay. I'm going to do that the whole way down, and then when you've done that, turn that over, and now you're going to place your thumb in the middle and just pull that over so those two nice neat edges are touching each other, and then go across the top again with your iron and you'll have a lovely perfect bias binding. Okay, and do that the whole way down your piece. Turn it over and press it on that side as well. So the next thing we're going to want to do is put in our piece of binding along the top here. So take your bias binding and open it out just like this, and you want to just leave a tiny bit hanging over the edge, alright? Fold it over like that, there, and then you're going to put your pin in where that fold is there. And you want to come along and do that all the way along. Like that, and the same on this end piece here. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to take that to the sewing machine. We're going to do a straight stitch straight across on number 4 stitch, straight across there on that line, and then we will come back. So now you've got your stitches right across the back. You just want to cut it off, just leave yourself a tiny bit to play with, okay, and then fold it over to the front, and you're going to fold it right on top of all those stitches what you've just done. Just get it right under. You can trim this back a bit actually, I think that's what I will do. Make sure, and you see what I've done wrong here. I've done it all the way across the front here, but I've stitched my ruffle the wrong way, so I'm going to have to unpick that and push that ruffle back over there and re-stitch that. So I shall just go and do that. So I stitched that back in, and that'll lay nicely now. So what I want to do next is just trim a little bit of this off here, because we don't need so much bulk underneath it, especially with all that there. So I'm just going to come along and just take my little scissors and trim a little bit off. because otherwise that's going to be really bulky on her chest. Straighten that up a bit there. There we go. Okay, so then you're going to bring your bias binding around from the back and then flip that over, and you're going to stitch that down across. But what you want to do is make sure you go across the top of your stitches if you can. If you can't, don't worry. I quite like to keep it looking like that. All right. So we're going to do a little back stitch here, stitch straight across, and a little back stitch there. So here we have it. I'll just move that bit further. So there we go. It's all laying beautifully now. So the next thing we want to do is just trim this around so that you've got a nice shape to that. So you've got to just trim it around in the same sort of shape, because we're going to put more bias binding on now and some straps. Okay, so lay that flat, and then we're going to get our bias binding and we're going to put it on the back. So I'm going to put it onto the back of the front piece. So what I'm doing now is I've just placed my needle into the fabric on that line, and then I'm going to place the other piece of the fabric here so that it's touching directly on the side there. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to very slowly come around, and as I move around I'm going to make sure that this edge is touching this edge. Now it's much easier to do it like this without pins if you can, so we're going to try and do that and get that in there. I'm going to keep it as flat as I possibly can, and hopefully you'll see as I'm doing it. Okay, I'm going to try and get it in there. It's trying to get it in the right place and film at the same time. 2 forward, a couple back, and then we're just going to come along just a little bit at a time. Right there, and then we're going to move the fabric around just a little, so it goes like that. And can you see that's on that line now? And I'm just going to follow it around with my finger, with the machine. There we go. And I'll move it just the tiniest fraction more. You just want to do really slow stitches. Even if your machine does a really quick stitch, what you can do is just do one and take your foot off. Okay, and then move it off again, and then move and just do another stitch. Okay. And then just keep going until you get it all the way around and it's sat really nicely. Alright. You don't really want to get too many creases in it. I'm coming up again now, and we're coming onto this bit here, and it's quite straight here. I'm just going to pop on there, and then onto the, once we get, and you can see the end of your, there, that's the end of my fabric. I'm just going to do a few back stitches. Okay, and then I'm going to take that off. Alright, there we go. So again, I'm going to just trim around here, just on that inside piece of fabric, and I'm just going to leave about 1/4 of an inch. So I don't want all that bulk inside it. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to fold it back over, so we're coming onto the front now, and you've got your fold there, so fold that in half as it was, or into the 1/4 as it was, and then place that on and get that nice and looking straight. Okay, and we're going to very carefully now stitch around here, keeping that just like that. All right, on that bit. So we're going to start here and we're going to stitch around to here. Start with a little back stitch. So if you've been watching it and you think, oh, that's a bit weird, I just realised I forgot to stitch on those pieces there and there, the 2 backs onto the front. So I've just done it now, and all I've done is I've just stitched them on for about 1/2 inch. I don't want them coming all the way up because that's going to make it harder to do my arm hose. So just stitch those on. That'll be stitched on earlier on in the program, in the video. Okay, so now we're going to just put all the way round now our piece of gathered fabric. So just take, that's our long piece, and we're just going to take our long piece of gathered fabric and we're going to pin it all the way around so that it's sitting So if you've got your front there, you want to make sure that that turned edge is sitting so that it is on the outside like that, and you're going to start here up there like that, and you're going to pin it all the way around, keep it, making sure there's no twists or anything in it. Go all the way around the whole thing, round and round to this side here. Okay, so I'll pin that and I'll come back and show you what I've done, because it might look a bit weird. When you get to this piece here, make sure that when you put your gathered piece of fabric on top, that is laying flat down just like that. So you've got it, so it's laying flat, going down like that, and then just carry on pinning all the way around, keeping those edges together. Okay, so I've got it all pinned together. I'm going to come to the sewing machine now. I just want a tiny bit hanging over that edge there, not too much, just a little bit. Okay, and I drop my foot down onto it, and we're aiming to keep on this side, so onto that 1/4 of an inch line. Okay, so we'll do a few forward, and then we'll do some back. And then we're going to go all the way around. But what you need to do as you're going around is you want to make sure you don't get any lumps or bumps coming up. So we're going to go all the way around, just following that 1/4 inch line. Okay, and as you get to these bits where it looks like it's bumping up, just take your fingers, push it down, and then come around. And just do one at a time like that. Take out a pin and then move around to the next piece. Now on this piece we're going to come, and it's a little bit of a curve, so we're just going to take our time because we want that piece to lay nice and flat. All right, a few ends here. So I'm coming around that very slowly, and I'm going to move that around so that it's just getting onto that where it's nice and curved. There we go. I'll take the pins out as we go. I do. So when you get to the end, just go right off the very end of it, and then do some back stitches and a few more forward. There we go, and that's that done. So I've just changed my foot to a wide mouth foot. I'm just going to come along now, and I'm going to zigzag all the way along just to get a neat edge on the edge of that seam which we've got the gathering on. So I'm just going to change it over to a zigzag, which is number 7 for me. I'm just going to go all the way. So a few back stitches. And go all the way around. So we've got the bias binding on the front, so we're just going to place the bias binding now onto the back. So we're going to do exactly the same as we did before. Open it up, measure up to the piece on the back, just have a little bit extra over, and then we're going to go to put the first pin in and go to the machine and just stitch that right across the end of your piece here. You might want to just lay that piece there and just get it so that it's in a straight line like that, and just trim that little excess off where it's not straight like that a little bit more. Okay, and then just go along as I say and do a back stitch there on, do a back stitch on, stitch straight the way across, and a back stitch at the finish. Okay, and do that on both sides. So just going to remove the bulk of this piece here, taking off a lot of that there. Just leave yourself about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm take off some of this here as well, just so there's not so much bulk in it, because it is difficult with the littler doll with the dolls, because they are much smaller than people. Do exactly the same with it on the other side. Just remove any bulk you might have. And just come along. There we go. Right. And then we're going to come over and make sure that that is all turned under, like that, and tuck that out the way there. Okay, make sure that all stays turned under, and you're just going to bring that over, tuck it underneath, and then you're going to machine across there like that. I need to get this a bit neater, so I'm just going to play with that until I've got that bit neater. I need to fold that piece down there in out of the way. Okay, and then you can just machine down there. Okay, and then we're going to machine all the way across here. And don't worry about this end at all, because that is not going to be seen at all. Okay, so I've got it nice and straight on there now. I'm just going to do a few forward. There we go, and then I'm going to do a few back. And then we're going right to the end. I have to just hold it here. It's just pulling here, but it's better. Okay, straight across now. Do a little back stitch. There we go. Okay, and do exactly the same on the other side. So just come around now with your scissors and just follow that sort of line of that curve around. So before we do this, you want to measure how far that is around from there to there, like this. Okay, and leave yourself a little bit of space. Okay, and bring it around and measure it up to there. And then when you get to here, you're on this piece here, I want you to put a pin there. Okay, and then I want you to measure 2¼ inches, all right? So I just put it down on my board, measure 2¼ and put a pin on the other piece. There we go. And that will be for the back of your arm, okay? So we're going to start here, and we just want to leave a little tiny piece just overhanging, just a small piece. And then we're going to put one pin into it just to hold us in place, like that. And then we are going to the sewing machine, so that you're like that there. And we're going to start to put, oh, I don't think I pinned through the fabric, and put one pin just in there, so that that is, just leave it so it's just over, okay? And then pop a pin in it and take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to follow this line around, okay, until we get up to that other pin. So I have my needle in the down position. I've got my 2 lines lined up. Make sure that back piece is well out of the way. We don't want to connect to that yet. Okay, and we're just going to come along. I'm going to do this very slowly. Let's see if I can get as much vision for you as you can get. Okay, and we're going to come along, and we're just going to do a few forward and a few back. Okay, and then we're going to just come along, and we're going to do it really slow. If your machine goes really fast, just do 1 stitch, 2 stitches, and just until you get where you want it to be. I'm just going to follow that line. You see that line there? I'm just following that line now. Got to here, and I can see that this piece isn't meeting up, so I'm just gonna move that up very, very slightly like that, and then I'm going to come around again and keep going around very slowly, keeping it on that line. Okay, move it over this side a little bit more so that edge is touching that edge. Keep going. And again. There we go, keep going. And then do a few back stitches. Okay, lift that out. Alright, so that is your front of your arm there. Alright, now I'm going to come around here. I'm going to remove that thread. Got a nice long bit, so you've got a long bit. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do, so we have this pin here at the 2 1/4 inches, and we're going to turn it all the way through without getting a twist in it, and place it on top of that back piece there. So, like that, sorry. So it's that way, so it's laying, so you've got your seam, it's marrying up there like that, and it's running down that raw edge like that. Okay, I'm just going to take my pin out, pop it into the fabric there, and I'm just going to start from there, and I'm going to machine all the way around, keeping that on that edge, just the same as we've just done. So as soon as you get to where the pin is, and you can get your foot and you can drop that foot in, and it's sitting right on that line, you can take your pin, drop your foot and take your pin out. Oops. Make sure you don't get loads of it stuck in there. Okay, I'm just going to come along and we're going to follow this edge down here like that. Okay, keeping that nice and straight. Do some back stitches. And then forward again. Right, so now I'm going to move my underneath fabric and bring this piece of the bias binding over. I'm going to stay on that line. I'm just going to very slowly move it over so I've got it in place. And you don't want to stitch it to this piece. You want to just stitch it to that piece at the back. There. There we go. Do a little back stitch. Okay, remove that. So now you should have an opening with these two pieces down the back here, like that, okay? And then on the front it should look like that. So what you're going to do now is just to turn it in, remove a little bit of the bulk on this inside piece, just up there. There we go, on that piece, and on this one here. So it's not on the bias binding, that's just on the actual piece of the front. There you go. Okay, and then you're going to bring this around, tuck that under so it's looking like as if it's a piece of bias binding again, and then bring that in and around, okay? And then you are going to stitch that all the way around, just like that, okay, all the way around there. Then when you get to this piece, which will be your shoulder, you are going to join those two pieces together here, and you're just going to do a stitch right across there and then down your back, okay? And then don't worry about doing those pieces at the end. Just finish it when you get to the end of your fabric like that, because then we will join that together afterwards, okay? So I should take that to the machine now and machine that all the way around. So I've dropped my foot into my fabric and I'm just going to come around and just machine it. Just a few stitches forward and a few back. Okay, and then go all the way around, just as we did when we were putting on the bias for the necks. So just keep going around. And then when you get here, just pull these together and you should get those to lay one really neatly on top of the other like that. a little bit of a struggle because we've only got that 2.5 inches, which is her shoulder. Okay, right, and then when you come around, ooh, lots of fiddly fluffy bits. There you go. Okay, just pull that in around again and just keep going. Keeping that as straight as you can all the way. Making sure that fabric's laying really nice and flat. Carry on coming around with the bias. If you notice there's a bit, don't stitch into it where there's a fold, okay? There you go. And you want to do exactly the same on the other side. So there we go, and I'm just going to take this is the very last bit. I don't think I'm not sure I videoed this last bit, so let's just do this again. Here is my little top. It's all but finished apart from these two pieces here and these two pieces here. And this is where we joined under the arms earlier so that we could put the ruffle on. I'm just going to take it to the machine and I'm just going to do a straight stitch straight down there, little back stitch, straight down, little back stitch, and then I'm going to come back and do a zigzag stitch. 3 back stitches. Straight down and a little back stitch. Do exactly the same on the other side, and then we're going to swap our foot over and we're going to do a zigzag. So just to finish it all off, I'm just going to go around, remove any long threads, and I'm going to cut off this little piece here. There we go. So then the next thing I'm going to do is put my embellishment on, and then I will show you what it looks like all finished. I hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye.